Targeting what he called the main artery of Russia's economy, President Biden yesterday announced a ban on all US imports of Russian oil. Russia has reacted today, saying it too is working on a broad range of sanctions that would hit the West's most sensitive areas.
Today, I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy. We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
The US move is a blow to Russia, one of the biggest exporters of oil and natural gas in the world. The move is also likely to impact Western consumers. But Joe Biden's decision is largely symbolic. The United States relies very little on Russian energy. The country's crude represented less than 2% of all US oil imports in December. Overall, Russian crude and petroleum products made up just about 5% of US imports at the end of 2021. Following the US move, the UK also announced plans to phase out Russian oil imports by the end of this year. Britain's Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng said that this transition will give the market, businesses and supply chains more than enough time to replace Russian imports. Russian oil makes up 8% of UK demand. The oil sanction does not apply to Russian natural gas, which accounts for some 4% of Britain's supply. But Kwarteng said he was exploring options to end that altogether. The European Union, which is heavily dependent on Russian gas, says it plans to cut imports by 2/3 and end its reliance on Russian supplies of fuel well before 2030. Russia supplies around 40% of the bloc's natural gas. Gas flows to Europe have so far been steady since the invasion. However, Moscow on Monday warned that Western sanctions on Russian oil could prompt it to close a major gas pipeline to Europe. And WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us live from New York. Susan, let's start with Kamala Harris's trip to Poland and Romania. Suddenly, it's a more complicated trip than she was anticipating.
Yes, it is. It was supposed to be a trip to raise the morale and unity between NATO member allies. And of course, the United States does have 9,000 U.S. troops stationed in Poland, 4,500 service members recently being deployed there in recent weeks because of the Russian war with Ukraine and sort of the possibility that Vladimir Putin would have further ambitions beyond Ukraine. And now we see this debacle happening and somewhat of a misunderstanding, if you may, between Poland and the United States, which both are NATO countries, and it seems that they seem to be passing this hot potato back and forth between one another with these MiG fighter jets. On the one hand, you know, as I mentioned, they're both NATO member states, so it shouldn't really matter which of them would deliver these fighter jets to Ukraine. But on the other hand, you can see the sensitivity and nuance of the situation when dealing with Russia, that they don't want to be the ones deliberately engaging and delivering these jets to Ukraine directly on their part. So we'll have to wait and see if Kamala Harris can work her foreign policy magic and come up with a solution to this debacle that the two sides are facing. But you know, the Ukrainians really are in need, and there are two schools of thought to this. First of all, whether or not Ukraine really needs fighter jets at this point. And the other being that, you know, NATO should get its act together and work united on a united front to help Ukraine on all fronts possible.
And Susan, let's talk about Joe Biden's ban on US oil imports. He was at pains yesterday to say to the American public that they're going to need to be ready to pay a price for defending Ukrainian democracy. We have seen opinion polls in the last week that show a clear majority of Americans, almost 3/4 of them, backing the idea of banning Russian oil imports. But we don't know how long they're prepared to tolerate pain at the pumps.
Overwhelming majority, according to a recent poll, if I'm not mistaken, 71% was the last one that I saw, of Americans do back the fact that banning Russian oil is the right thing to do. However, the problem is when we go further to see these polls on how the questions are being asked is how to move forward and how to really replace that Russian oil, and that's where the complications come in. You know, on the one hand, you have many within the president's own party and Republicans saying that the answer is literally under America's own feet. You can really become energy independent, bring down the price of oil by opening up fossil fuel production here in the U.S. right away. It would be a lot faster. It would bring the price of gas down. America can produce its own oil without importing oil from, by the way, Russia is a very small portion of imports in the United States. The majority is Canada, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia at this point. And now the United States is looking to countries like Venezuela and calling for outputs more from Saudi Arabia and possibly a nuclear deal with Iran. But it would be faster to produce here in the United States. So a lot of that poll that we're seeing, Americans are for producing their own oil here in the United States as opposed to getting it from Russia. That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is the president is not being clear that when their gas prices go up, when he says that Americans need to pay a price, then for how long and at what cost. When these prices go up, then commodities go up. Then when these sanctions are being imposed, and you know, despite the fact that a small portion of Russian oil is being imported in the United States, a lot of companies are now privately have an aversion of working with Russia regardless. So you're going to see a lot of unemployment go up because of these companies stopping to work with Russia as well. So it's going to have a ripple effect on the economy as well. And a lot of Democrats, even within the White House, are privately concerned that the path that the president is taking, although it's the right path in banning Russian oil, it hopes to set an example for the rest of the world in cutting off Russia's one-source economy from the rest of the world. How it's being replaced and the effects it's going to have ultimately because of the dire economic effects it's going to have here in the United States, ultimately how it's going to affect the Democratic Party moving into the 2022 presidential elections. I'm sorry, midterm elections is a cause for concern. So yes, the overwhelming majority of Americans do support that, but how it's being replaced is the main debate right now.